Welcome to Education in Our Community, where we live, where we work, and where we play. I am your host, Pastor Mcknight of the Rock of Truth Baptist Church, located at 459 61st Street in the city of Oakland. And we have as a co-host, but also a special guest, Miss Lora SALL. Thank you for being with us today. And we shall be discussing today what I think is the number one problem in urban America today, if not in all of America today. It is that group that have been labeled homeless. But we want to change that, not refer to them as being homeless, but as being displaced and dispossessed. And so we will be discussing on this program the displaced and dispossessed that we see underneath freeways, on the side of freeways, that is underneath the overpasses of freeways and besides some freeways, in abandoned buildings, and the numbers are growing. As a matter of fact, in Berkeley, on the border of Oakland and Berkeley, and in North Oakland and deep in West Oakland and East Oakland, the numbers are appalling. I want to read you a definition. We know to be displaced is to be removed from what you might consider is your rightful or your normal place. That is being displaced. But we want to look at the definitions that we're going to use for our discussion today of being dispossessed. I took the liberty of looking them up. And it says here, dispossessed. It gives us several synonyms for dispossessed. I want you to remember them as we embark on our discussion of the displaced and dispossessed. A synonym for dispossessed is to divest, to strip, to rob, to cheat out of, to deprive. Usage in a sentence: the peasants have been dispossessed of their land. Another dictionary definition: to put out of possession, especially of real property, ousted, to banish, to abandon ownership. Landlords have dispossessed many old tenement buildings. And then there is another definition that says to take away from, having been dispossessed of your land. Dispossession definition, meaning what is dispossessed? To dispossess people who have had their property, their homes, their land, their valuables, their dreams, their hopes, their ambition taken away from them. I believe that we will find in the definitions that have been offered the people that we now call homeless. Homeless is a kind term when you compare it to being dispossessed. You must be dispossessed by someone. You can become homeless on your own. But to end up in a homeless group is to have your hopes, your dreams, your aspiration, your access to a livelihood taken away from you. And so from observation, We would say that this is no accident, it is no coincidence, and it is definitely not an act of God. But we have these growing numbers right here in our midst, under our noses, but yet out of sight, consciously, by design and decree and desire, that we have these groups of displaced and dispossessed individuals. By number one, someone desired it, someone had to decree it, and then someone had to design it. Our co-host for today, Miss Lora SALL, is going to read to us an excerpt from a book that I believe was first published, if memory serves me correctly, in 1971 or in 1974, but I believe 71. It is entitled The Choice, the Issue of Black Survival, a question of black obsolescence, or black people becoming obsolete in white America. And so she's going to read this excerpt. Mr. Samuel Yette was a former correspondent for Newsweek magazine. He was like our Daniel Ellsberg and the Pentagon Papers. He released information that he had access to that was not designed to be released to the public. And so to give you an insight into it, she's going to read the following paragraph. If you would do that for us so they could hear us way over in Sacramento.
They were obsolete people, described by the then Labor Secretary W. Willard Weiss as a human scrap heap.
My Lord.
We are piling up a human scrap heap of between 250,000 and 500,000 people a year, many of whom never appear in the unemployment statistics.
Wow.
They are often not counted among the unemployed because they are giving up looking for work and thus count themselves out of the labor market. The rate of non-participation in the labor force by men in their prime years increased from 4.7% in 1953 to 5.2% in 1962. The increase has been sharpest among non-whites, increasing from 5.3% to 8.2% in that period. The human scrap heap is composed of persons who, as a consequence of technological development, of their own educational failures, of environments of poverty, and other causes that disqualify them for employment in a skilled economy, cannot and will not find work without special help. The 115,000 boys who failed the Selective Service Educational Test in 1963 are candidates for the human scrap heap. If they are to turn the human scrap heap into the materials for richer progress and more rewarding lives, then private industry and our private institutions must help us to do the job that government actions have only suggested need doing.
Thank you ever so much. Now that classification that was given then by the Secretary of Labor, Willard Wirtz, W-I-R-T-Z, I believe. And he classified this group back in 1963, I believe, he said, as the human scrap heap. And how would you define human scrap heap before I give his definition?
Oh, my goodness.
What comes to mind had you not read that article if someone said to you, it's a scrap heap?
I just think in terms of piles and piles and piles of waste. And
Waste.
Yeah.
Piles of waste.
Yeah.
A scrap heap.
Garbage.
Garbage.
Things that you want to discard.
Garbage. Something you want to discard.
Yes. Yes. And that's what we're seeing, both amongst people who are classified homeless, houseless, as well as the people who have given up hope.
Wow.
Living their lives in a way that society classifies as normal and good. Human scrap heap, to me, says waste.
Waste. And the Secretary of Labor defined them as individuals who were unemployed, having no skills, and I'm paraphrasing, very little education, and have given up on seeking employment. And they're not counted when you hear X number of people are unemployed. You have to first be employed to become unemployed. So when they tell you that the ranks of the unemployed is now X percentage, you can triple that when it comes to the African American community. I'm trying to think. I believe it was in 1980. I stand to be corrected on this, but certainly it was in the 80s, if not in 1980. I first heard it in about 1989, that the government was saying, and if you want to check this out, I believe it was the Department of Commerce, not the Department of Labor. It could have been, but I think it said Commerce. It could have very well been that Department of Labor. That by the year 2000, 17 years ago, that I believe the percentage, and again, I want to include a disclaimer here, I'm going to say 60%, even though I believe it was 80%, of young African American males between the ages of 18, I think they said 30, would be unemployed and would never be employed. That's in government files. And the next show, I'll give you the exact year and the department that released this prediction in the 1980s, that by the year 2000, that upward of 60%, it could very well be higher than 60, so we say upward of 60% of young African American males would be unemployed and would never be employed. I hope you looked around the black community recently at the ranks of the unemployed amongst this particular group. And since you're thinking with us, the question must be, how could they have known at least a decade in advance that there would be this horrendous rate of unemployment and despair and disillusionment amongst young African American males? Now, we also can trace it back to 1963 with that human scrap heap. And again, Yeti's book, The Choice, I recommend you find it, Go to Marcus Bookstore down on 39th and Martin Luther King. I know they had it. It has been republished. He went underground for years after he published that book. He resurfaced maybe a few years ago. And the last time I was in Marcus, they had it. It had been republished. And pick up that the book, The Choice by Samuel Yette. And he's spelling his name with 2 E's or 1. Y-E-T-T-E, 1 E. And he talks about that. What do you have to say from your observation here in the Bay Area?
I think, as you were speaking, this falls right in line. What came to mind was Willie Lynch.
Yes, the Willie Lynch speech.
Because he spoke in advance of where things were going to be if you follow his method of controlling the Africans who were enslaved.
Yes.
And so this, what I read was from the 60s. What you just spoke about was a prediction based on 2000 and forward. And if you look at our incarceration, the levels of incarceration, you look at the number of young people who are caught up in that revolving door of going back and forth into incarceration and coming out, those who have not graduated from school, and who come out with even less hope of finding a job or moving forward. And then they end up as part of this so-called heap. We have to really wonder, now what is it that is happening here? Was this all part of an overall plan? If we can't get you by keeping you enslaved, then let's work on other ways of getting you. Let's keep you down by preventing you from being able to work. Let's keep you down by preventing you from being able to vote. Let's keep you down by breaking up the families and making sure the man is not in the home and that he is in and out of prison. Let's keep you down at all costs and make sure that even though we might have one that appears to be doing well, i.e. the White House, et cetera, that's not the vast majority of the people in the communities.
I like that. I like that. Wow, I wish I would have brought another prop with me. But that being said, earlier you said that a group of people who are powerless, no, you said hopeless. There are 3 stages of being dispossessed. One is to feel helpless, that you're not in a position to help yourself. The second one is an overall feeling of powerlessness. You don't have any power. So without any power, you can't help yourself nor your family. And the third and final and most tragic state of existence to any part of humanity is to be hopeless. You see, because as long as you have some hope, you're able to regain your power. And once you're able to regain your power, then you are in a better position of being able to help yourself. Simply because no one is going to help African people collectively but African people. And so if you have no hope and you have no power, then you're never going to be able to change your condition. I was reading an excerpt by Muhammad Ali and something that had been written of him and about him. And they quoted him as saying that if a man at 50 is in the same place he was and doing the same thing at 20, he has wasted 30 years of his life.
Mm-hmm. And that's very common.
Okay.
Amongst people who have given up hope. And in this article, they spoke about the people who were part of this so-called heap. They spoke about at some point they give up the whole idea of being able to find work. Another quote, the most powerful tool in the hands of the oppressor are the minds of the oppressed. And so once you get to that point, as you read in your definitions there, at some point, it wasn't just that they were homeless or no longer feeling like they had any power or any possibilities of becoming anything other than where they are. And so they continue to just go further and further down and form their own communities
there you
right
go,
there.
Infinity community, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the late Dr. Gardner Taylor out of New York, outstanding preacher, theologian, philosopher, he said that there are two Americas, the rich and the poor, or the haves and the have-nots. And he said, my brothers and sisters, I want you to know there are two distinguishable black Americas. Yes, there are two different black Americas living within America that falls into that same category, the haves and the have-nots. And he said there's no love lost between the two groups. Matter of fact, in some instances, there's even open hostility. And we're seeing this. I had shared before the show that Thursday, took some time, went out, found some blankets and washed them in quilts, folded them up. We found bags and put each one in. And we were going to take and give them to two different encampments, 27th Street, one down by 34th Street, to the people there. We wanted to give them to them individually rather than giving them to an organization. Only to find out we couldn't do that. You had said this trash, this garbage, it was so much of it, they were surrounded by it, and you almost had to make a way through it. And if you got through, there was this attitude barrier, like you don't belong here. I said, oh, I got that. And I left because it was like, you have no business here. And I couldn't give what we had brought because you're not one. And so there is this rejection of anyone outside of the community. And it is growing deeper because we have had programs of feeding. And I never encountered the attitude, the mental and spiritual barrier that we encountered on Friday, which was yesterday. We ended up taking them to the Richmond rescue mission so they could give them out to the people because we couldn't get through there. And so the question is, how long before these individuals, human beings like us, feel so pressured and pressed up against the wall, and if you bag any animal into a corner, it's going to come out swinging, scratching, biting, and fighting. In West Oakland, for instance, in this gentrification, the groups that's moving into there, the millennials that were not there for decades, closed down a recycling center around about 33rd Street or 34th because of the group of people it was attracting. Now, right there underneath the freeway, around about Adeline, where you're on your way there to Home Depot, that large encampment, they have to move by the 1st of May. They don't know where they're moving to, but they've already said they're going to move them out. The city has sanctioned it, but the new residents that is not reflected in the homelessness say, we don't want them here, because they know that sooner or later they're going to strike out. And you strike out at those in your immediate vicinity, community, area that you perceive as being unlike you. And they say, we don't want this when it comes.
And so when they move them, where are they going to go?
They said they wanted to find some property, but they haven't found it yet.
And how many years have we heard that plan? Okay. Finding property and putting, actually I heard about a program in New York where a nonprofit started investing in vacant buildings and rehabbing some of these buildings so that people in New York who were found to be homeless could have a place, a roof over their heads, and a new beginning. But the numbers are still greater than what's available. And so when you're talking about West Oakland and you're moving these people out, guess where part of those numbers are going to be? Within our prison population, our jail population. Part of the challenge with many of the people who have already been on the street for a number of years, there are mental health issues that are not being addressed. And you have that person being moved to a new area, then you're disrupting their mental health, because it's that stability of being in that set area that.
Now, I promise you, I promise you this time, I never promise you, we're going to continue this discussion. We're going to take up to where we are leaving off now, because we are fastly running out of time. I am your host, Pastor Mcknight, my co-host, Miss Lora SALL, thanking you for joining us. And if you appreciate and enjoy our discussion, please let the station know here at Berkeley Community Media, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you for joining us.